All right, this is take 2 of a video that I'm doing in order to discuss what I don't normally discuss on my channel, which is speculation about things like what's going to happen on January 6th in this case. So if you don't know, on January 6th, there's going to be a joint session of Congress where they are going to count the electoral votes and decide officially, for once and for all, who is going to be president going into 2021 or after January 20th, 2021. So before we get into that, I want to remind you to please like, share, and subscribe. And also, if you would please subscribe to me on BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble in order to be able to get all notifications for, so click the bells, all the fancy stuff, and be able to know that you are able to catch the videos if you like the content on this video channel. And tonight at 9, we're going to have a live discussion of this topic with the guy James Kelly, who wrote some of these options along with another person who shared them with me. So here are the possibilities for Republican presidential victory. So I'm going to be reading them word by word. Option 1, Arizona, Georgia, and possibly another state's electoral votes flip due to their legislatures certifying Trump electors. This would give Trump 270 plus electoral votes and he wins outright. Time is running out for this, but Arizona is close to flipping. Option 2, Pence refuses to count. So those of you that don't know, Mike Pence is going to be presiding over it as president of the Senate. So option 2 is Pence refuses to count the disputed slates of electoral votes. Neither Trump nor Biden have 270 electoral votes, and there is an election under the 12th Amendment. The House votes by delegation and Trump wins. The Senate chooses the vice president. Option 5 leads to option 2 or 3. So going on to option 3, it's the same as option 2, but Pelosi doesn't allow the House to vote at all. It's illegal, but she does it anyway. The Senate chooses a vice president under the 12th Amendment, and the vice president will be the acting president. Would the Senate elect Pence? Probably. The Georgia elections are unlikely to affect this. Option 5 leads to option 2 or 3. So the reason that Pence could be elected vice president and then subsequently president is because up until January 21st, Kamala Harris is not in office as vice president. Therefore, Pence would be the tie-breaking vote in the event the Democrats win both Georgia runoffs, and therefore it would be 51 to 50 for the Republicans, and up until then. Option 4, where states have submitted 2 slates of electors, Pence chooses the Trump slate over a Democrat slate. Due to the allegations of fraud, Trump receives 270 plus electoral votes and wins outright. This is the most controversial outcome because Pence alone does the choosing and counting. And then option 5, Pence announces electoral votes and representatives and senators object. The vote counting statute is likely unconstitutional because it says that in the event of a dispute, the electoral vote slates submitted by the governors are the ones accepted. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution vests authority in state legislatures that is non-delegable. Pence invokes the 12th Amendment because the Constitution is the supreme law. This forces the presidential election into the House and the vice presidential election into the Senate. See option 2, Trump wins, or option 3, a vice president will be acting president above. So he adds as a postscript, in each instance, there is a high likelihood that Trump declassifies information about foreign hacking that is impossible to ignore even by rhinos, influencing any debate and preventing defections in the Senate vote. Anyone who suborns foreign interference is in legal jeopardy. And then he goes on to say that he and James Kelly, the person who's going to be on later, mapped out these possibilities. James Kelly thinks option 1 is the most likely, meaning the one where the state legislatures choose to invalidate the existing electors and certify the Trump electors. But my other friend says that option 5, leading to option 2, is the most likely. So let me run through these. Option 1, which is the one with the state legislatures, is the one that I think many people were riding on. But like it says, the time is running out. And these state legislatures they haven't stepped up and actually, rolled down the hill on the bike. They've come close to the hill, and they've been doing hearings, and they've been doing subcommittee votes and things like that within their state legislatures, talking about the fraud, but they haven't actually gone ahead and decertified the elections as full state legislatures, or recertified the Trump electors. So I haven't seen option 1 happening. The unfortunate truth is that many of these bodies, the Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, and Michigan and Wisconsin state legislatures, they all have Republican majorities, but the leadership, the legislative leadership of them, meaning the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the House of the state, is usually someone who is saying, no, let's hold off, this isn't worth it, or whatever, which means that they are not actually going through with it, unfortunately. So I have not seen reason to trust that this is going to happen, right? So even though I'm someone who I'd be perfectly glad if this election result was overturned, I don't see option 1 happening. Option 2, where Pence refuses to count the disputed slates of electoral votes. The fact is that they did do that lawsuit, and my friend says that he doesn't need the lawsuit in order to assert the power. But the fact is that Pence actually, in response to the lawsuit against him by Louis Gohmert and a bunch of other Republican activists and Trump activists, he said, no, please drop the suit. I don't have this power. That's according to the reports I've seen. Now, so option 3 is basically the same idea, and option 4 is also likely the same idea, and option 5 is covered by option 2. So basically, one of the reasons that I'm a skeptic, and I don't believe that Trump is going to continue to be president after January 20th, is because we've seen since the election, and this doesn't give me any joy to say this, and maybe it's the eternal pessimist in me, but the political system has shown that, first of all, the electoral system, the one that actually, they craft the vote counting and tallying functions of the electoral system, they have shown zero capacity to be accountable for the ways that they violated the law, because they don't make the law, right? This is something that both me and James Kelly and our friend, who I'll call Brad, all agree on, that the electoral system, the secretaries of state and the Supreme Court in some of these states, they don't make the laws. It is the state legislature that makes the law. The governor can veto or sign a bill into law, but they don't make the law, right? So unfortunately, they've behaved as if they are above the law, and therefore you've seen that even with the revelation of numerous irregularities, and I'm not going to get into it, but I'll list a few, issues like stopping the voting in the middle of the night, or stopping the vote counting in the middle of the night, and bogus reports of pipe bursts in Atlanta at the arena where where the vote counting was happening. Those things have to be adjudicated. There is no excuse for why it was not addressed by the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, and his state's governor. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse also in Georgia for why there was no supervision over those votes that were counted when everyone was told to leave and they brought those ballots out of a suitcase. So in the midst of all of this evidence, just in Georgia, that was brought as to how this is a blatantly unsupervised and invalid process under the Georgia state law, the state authorities have done nothing. Neither the state electoral authorities, the Secretary of State, nor the Georgia law enforcement, right? So the state's attorney general, and not at the federal level either with William Barr. So why am I supposed to trust that when this electoral legal system doesn't take action in order to secure the vote, why am I supposed to believe that something's going to happen now? Because supposedly Mike Pence has the ability and the Georgia state legislature has the ability, which they're not taking advantage of, to decertify the election. And then on top of that, this is beyond just the electoral system issue. You also see the problem of the courts just abdicating their role in this, right? The courts, they're not supposed to make the law. They're not supposed to legislate from the bench, but they are supposed to adjudicate and resolve disputes between parties that are in conflict. And there are parties that are in conflict here. And what's their solution every time? Say that there's no standing. Say that there's what they've said in several cases. I believe in Wisconsin was the most recent. They say it's latches, meaning that yes, there might be merits to the case, but the time has passed, and it's basically I would say a lighter way of saying that the statute of limitations is over. Like imagine that within a month and a half of something happening to you that you need to take someone to court for, they would say, well, it's too late, right? So that's one of the reasons I have zero confidence in the system as a whole, unfortunately, including Donald Trump, that he would be able to overturn the election, that I see numerous reasons to doubt its validity. And not only do I doubt its validity, I will never, ever, ever believe, based on the evidence that I've heard in the Michigan state legislature hearings, or in I believe the other place that I was listening to was, I think it was Georgia. There's no reason to actually have confidence in the electoral system. And now there's less reason to have confidence in the legal system because their response to it has been saying, well, we're not going to take controversial cases that are going to politicize the court. Well, guess what? The court has become political because there are certain issues that are political that get resolved in the courts. That's why there is a Roe v. Wade. If politics is not supposed to be, if the fact is that certain cases have political stakes at hand, right? So Roe versus Wade was a very political case, right? And if the court doesn't want to be involved in politics, they have to go back to 1971, if I'm correct, and say to Harry Blackmun and I think Hugo Black was still on the court at the time, and Warren Burger, and say to them, look, you can't adjudicate the case. You can't just say because we're the Supreme Court that there's a right to privacy that entitles a woman to choose whether to abort a fetus or not, right? That is a political case. I don't care what side of the issue you're on, right? The gay marriage case, Obergefell, for sure is a political case because there were numerous state ballot issues that were brought before the case was ruled on, including Prop 8 in California that said no, we reject as a public the notion that marriage is anything besides the marital bond between one man and one woman, right? So Obergefell was for sure Obergefell, the 2015 decision. I think it was Obergefell versus Hodges. If I'm wrong, please put a comment. But it was for sure a political case because there were millions of people in those states that held those ballot issue elections that voted to defend marriage as an institution between a man and a woman, and their votes were thrown out undemocratically by the Supreme Court. And it's bogus. I believe that if the United States wants to have this decision as a society that changes the definition of marriage, the Supreme Court should not be the body that does it. But they did, right? So the reason that I have zero confidence in the process is because you have a system that's basically abdicated all responsibility, and they've said, look, what happened may have happened. We're not even going to examine the evidence. We're just going to let it happen, and that's in the interest of not politicizing the court, not politicizing the electoral system, which is inherently political because all the time, lawsuits are brought in order to change electoral laws on purely political bases, whether it's removing voter ID requirements because supposedly they're discriminatory on the basis of race, which they're not, whether it is in order to facilitate larger windows for early voting, which is meaningless. Even in my state, I live in Ohio, which is one of the most, it has one of the most secure electoral systems in the country. We have early voting all the way. I think it's almost a month before the election. I actually did early voting the first day that I could this past year, I guess is what I should say. Happy New Year, by the way. And nobody made any issue of it, right? So this notion that it's hard for people to vote and the different restrictions on people voting are racist is completely political and has no basis in any data or evidence that can be presented in any of the cases that have been in the courts. And beyond that, right, this notion that the judiciary should not wade into political issues and therefore not rule on electoral disputes is belied by the New York 22nd District. And I've gone over it before, but New York's 22nd District is going to start the new year without a representative, right? And this is from Syracuse.com. Because of the electoral dispute between Republican Claudia Tenney and the incumbent Democrat Anthony Brindisi, they're not going to have a representative, and that's because the court has said, "Oh, we don't have. We're still going through the process of recounting the votes, deciding which votes are valid or invalid." Right? So that's how contradictory this whole process is. That while the Democrats, while the media, and while many Republicans are saying, and I would say the Republican leadership are saying that it's time to move on, just let Smelly Joe into the White House because we can't just undermine confidence in the electoral system. There are people who are undermining confidence in the electoral system within one district in New York. And those will say, oh, but it's only one district. Once you do one, the same rule applies for anywhere. It applies for any race. I don't care whether the race is for, school board or for the, the governor of Wisconsin or whatever. Electoral disputes are electoral disputes, and it's time to actually be upfront about what's happened here. Despite all of his accomplishments, despite everything that he did in order to fulfill many of the promises, I'm not going to say all the promises of his presidency, Donald Trump's time in office may have been wasted, right? And I'm sorry to say that, right? Because I was happy for many of the things that he did accomplish. I was happy for his decision to build the wall, even though in the beginning I really was not on board with it, and his resolve in getting it done. I was happy about his decision to rip up NAFTA and start fresh and do the USMCA and his trade deals with Japan and all of those different policies that he did in order to restore the confidence of the average working class American that there are people out there that are looking after their economic interest. I also like the fact that he was willing to push back against the Marxist and really anti-American tone of our academia and our media and the way that they bring in gender and racial politics into everything. But the bottom line is that it could be, and I still think it is true, that the swamp, the people that are in charge of Washington, D.C., they have way too much power, and there really is no way for one person, even the president of the United States, to vanquish them. And we see it time after time in the way that they got Michael Flynn to be prosecuted unfairly and forced him to resign as national security advisor. Who do they put in instead? They put in this swamp dog, swamp thing, whatever you want to call him, H.R. McMaster, who was basically the carbon copy of every other Bush era neoconservative. If you remember, there was the incident with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her office in Congress, which was basically being used as a blackmail scheme by a bunch of Pakistani criminals. I forget what their name was, but here. So I'll just bring it up. So Imran Awan, if you remember that case, this was in 2018. This guy was basically being flagged for every financial crime in the book, and basically he was, he was given a slap on the wrist because he was connected and Congress was unwilling. And this was a Republican Congress, okay? I don't want people to tell me that, oh, the Democrats are doing this. They're letting. No, it was Paul Ryan. It was the Republicans. It was, what do you got? The Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General at the time. They were all unwilling to go and look into this and say, yes, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she is enabling criminals within Congress to look at sensitive information and undermine the digital security of the United States. And yeah, I think that we've basically seen a failure on a systemic level of the cyber security of the United States, of all of this, and it's all in order to undermine the progress of the last few years. And does that mean that Trump was a bad president? Look, I think that it's not an easy question to answer. One of the things that I think you have to give him credit for, okay, is that Trump did decide to prioritize diplomacy over just dick wagging and interventionism, right? He did not invade North Korea and he didn't bomb North Korea. Unfortunately, he did bomb Syria on 2 occasions, and I think he still has to be judged according to that because those were 2 campaigns that were based on very fallacious goals. I mean, what was the goal of bombing Assad when everybody knows that he did not have the intention to remove Assad from power, and he was basically just doing it for show, right? Therefore, I would argue that it was better not to have done it altogether, right? But he was pressured to do so, and the media dishonestly were reporting all of these things about chemical attacks that were not as clear as they made it out to be. And in the end, we know that it was wrong, and that a lot of those chemical weapons were actually deployed by the would-be rebels, the Islamist rebels that were there fighting against Assad. This is no support for Assad, but I'm just saying that Donald Trump has to be judged not just according to the good things he did, but according to his failures. And yes, this includes failures regarding the legal system, regarding appointing H.R. McMaster to begin with, appointing John Bolton, and getting into all these ridiculous spats that I think really broke his momentum, right? Because at the end of the day, he was a better president than the ones who came before him, better than Bush, better than Clinton, certainly better than Obama, in my opinion. I think of the presidents that came before him, Bush and Obama were abominable. They were horrible for the country, and that Donald Trump was sort of a breath of fresh air. But I don't think that, given the amount of resistance that we've seen within the administration, within the legal system, and within you see these Republicans all the time voting for crap just based on their needs, not based on the needs of the public. So they forced the NDAA through, right? The National Defense and what do you call it? The NDAA is concerning the National Defense Appropriations Act. That's what it's called. So they were so greedy to have that cash flowing to the defense industry through our military that they forced it through, right? It was that important that these senators and congressmen wanted to stick it in his eye and say, no, we're going to basically take this money and spill it on the table and say, fuck you. So for people who are out there, and look, I respect people's opinions. I think people have the right to speculate, but I don't have any confidence anymore. I unfortunately think that we're in for 4 years of Biden and Kamala, maybe more Kamala than Biden. Who's to say when that'll happen? I think it will happen. That's speculation. If people want to take me to task for speculating on that, that's only fair. But yeah, I don't think that we're in for one of these pleasant surprises this week. I think now, being that as it may, okay, I've said a lot of negative things here. I've spread a lot of doom and gloom. You might ask, well, do you have hope for anything? I don't know exactly how to answer that. Okay, I believe the Republican Party has proven itself to be unworthy of the role that it had the opportunity to take, which would be to, essentially restore the United States to a country that respects its neighbors and respects its citizens, right? And meaning that it would look after the priorities of the citizens rather than the priorities of the special interests that push war abroad and more taxation and control at home. So, in light of that, I think that there is a little bit of hope in what Ted Cruz did, and I don't think that it's going to work in terms of overturning the electoral college vote, right? It's not going to work. I don't think it's designed to work, but I think that it could lead to something that would help in a different way, and it might take a long time for it to do so. But some of the effects could be immediate. Let me just
Democrats have done this for years.
So there are going to be GOP senators led by Ted Cruz who object to electoral college certification and demand an emergency audit. And the list is, right now, besides Josh Hawley, who was the first person who announced that he's going to object separately, there's going to be Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. These are all Republicans. So I'm just going to name the senator and the state. And if your senator is not on this list, then I'm sorry, but your senator is a dishonest piece of crap. I don't care whether Republican or Democrat, but I think if you're not on this list, you have to be held accountable. Okay? So Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, James Lankford of Oklahoma, who I'm a little surprised to be on this list, Steve Daines of Montana, John Kennedy of Louisiana, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Mike Brown of Indiana, and then the senators who have just been elected: Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, Roger Marshall of Kansas, Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. So the total is, let me see here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and with Josh Hawley, it's 12. And potentially Rand Paul, I think, could join in a different effort. So that would make 13 who would object to the electoral count. That could be the unlucky 13 for Mitch McConnell. And I'll explain what I mean. Those of you that don't know, this is a different issue that's going on. It's called Force the Vote. and it's about Medicare for all. And I give credit for the people who are undertaking this, even though I oppose the goals. I'm an opponent of Medicare for all. Here, whoops. You saw some OBS right there. Anyway, so they are trying to hold accountable members of the Progressive Caucus in Congress, and they include all of these people who are here. I'm not going to name them because it doesn't matter, because it's a side topic here. But these are people that have committed in the past to supporting Medicare for all as the template for universal health care in the United States. I, of course, have opposed Medicare for all and universal health care, and I believe that we have to centralize healthcare. We have to remove more government from healthcare and even downsize some of the programs that already exist. But the point is that these activists are telling these politicians who won't support it, who won't force Nancy Pelosi to have a floor vote on Medicare for all by saying, well, if you don't give us that vote, well, we're not going to vote for you as Speaker of the House, right? The reason that I admire it is because if these people did do what I'm talking about, and it's not even all of them, but let's say 16 of them were to say, well, we're not even going to show up that day, so Nancy Pelosi can forget about being Speaker of the House because her majority isn't big enough. I would say that we have to we have to hand these people at least we have to give them a round of applause because they are stating it as it should be, that party leaders shouldn't determine policy when they say that they have goals and then they don't actually attempt to accomplish them, right? Nancy Pelosi said for many years that she supports Medicare for all, and it's largely been empty rhetoric. And a lot of these progressives that got into Congress have also, it's been a lot of empty rhetoric. Mark Pocan, who is the head of and Pramila Jayapal, the two heads of the Progressive Caucus, as well as the squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and Ilhan Omar, and the fourth member is Rashida Tlaib. They have largely been full of empty rhetoric. I think Rashida Tlaib might have actually gotten on board with the force the vote effort. I'm not sure. If you're a progressive, you can put that in the not in the chat, but I guess either in the chat when this goes to premiere or in the comments. I'm saying that she might actually have joined in, and she might be saying, yeah, I'm not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. And therefore, if she can't get those votes to be Speaker of the House, then her career is over, and the Democrats have to choose a new Speaker. Likewise with Mitch McConnell. So you see, there are these, there's all these different senators who are saying, yeah, we're not going to vote. We're going to object. And the other thing that I think they could do beyond objecting is to say, look, we have this group of 12 or 13 people, depending on whether Rand Paul is also going to object. And Mitch McConnell would then have a problem on his hands, because they could go to him and say, look, now we objected, and if you want to be Senate Majority Leader, then you have to basically help us, right? Because if the Republicans win one of the races in Georgia, happening on, I believe it's Tuesday. It's 2 days from now. The Republicans automatically get the majority. So it doesn't matter whether it's Loeffler or Perdue who get reelected, which I'm not even sure that's going to happen. We have very, very much of, there's uncertainty because there's such low confidence in the electoral process, and there's such low confidence in the senators themselves, and there's such low confidence in the GOP to do anything, that I am absolutely willing to entertain that the Democrats could win both races, or they could win one race. But if they lose one of the races, if the Democrats lose the race between Kelly Loeffler and I think his name is Raphael Warnock, or if they lose the race between David Perdue and John Ossoff, okay, then the Democrats don't have the majority in the Senate. Then Ted Cruz can go and say to him, I have 13 people here behind me, and we can come to you and say, look, you've been in charge of the Senate since 2014, right? And we've gotten a lot done together. But this isn't about just getting things done, it's about holding the line. And when it comes to holding the line, there's much to be desired from Mitch McConnell. He's a guy who's willing to stab people in the back at the drop of a hat if they're not loyal to his mandates. And now there's 13 senators in Congress who are in many cases from very, very safe seats, right? You have a person from Wyoming who Wyoming has never, I don't think Wyoming has had a Democrat in the Senate for generations. And I'm talking like before World War II. You have a senator from Kansas, so there haven't been Democrats successful in senatorial races in Kansas for many years as well. And you have both senators from Tennessee. So these are people that McConnell can huff and puff, but he's not very likely to unseat both of them, especially since neither of them are up for election in 2022. And they can say, look, you need us too, right? It's not a one-way street. As leader, you depend on the members of your caucus in the Senate. So either you help us object to this, right? Or we don't vote to reelect you majority leader. And I think ultimately, if Mitch McConnell does not go ahead and help these senators and say, yeah, we will object as all the Republicans in the Senate, I think that this could lead to what I think is the long-term solution here, which is the actual split of the Republican Party into the corporate wing, formally into the corporate wing and into the citizen wing. Okay, so you have these senators, 13 of them or 12 of them as of right now, possibly 13 including Rand Paul, and you have several dozen congressmen, and they could say, well, we're never going to join automatically with the Republican majority, the Republicans, whether they're in the minority or the minority. So there's no hope for a Republican majority without us. We're going to defect. We're going to create a new party. I would say call it something like the Citizen Party, and that's basically going to be a third party in the United States, and they would probably be a little bit more libertarian in some ways, but obviously not to the degree that the LP is. And that would be the real revolution that Donald Trump wreaks, because it's been many decades since the US has had three poles in politics. And I believe in 2022, if they would have to compete with the new Citizen Party, right? If they would have to compete with them, the Republicans would suffer even greater losses. You would see, in fact, in some of the Republican primaries, you would see the Republicans losing to Citizen Party upstarts or supporters of the same line in the Citizen Party, or you would see them going into the general election and getting just mossed by the Citizen Party candidate. And I'm talking about in some states where the Republicans are not, there's states like Alaska, there's states like Montana, and there's states like West Virginia where I believe that the Democratic Party is slowly becoming a little bit more of a niche party, because people don't really have much of a connection to the National Democratic Party platform, right? What does the Democratic Party offer to people in states like Alaska, where it's mostly people who they live in more isolated communities, and they don't really have much to latch onto in terms of the new ideology of the Democratic Party, which is based on race, gender, and not now in religion, right? Would you believe? As a kid, I would never have believed that the Democratic Party would nominate religious nut jobs to public office. People like Raphael Warnock, people like Keith Ellison, right? So, in closing, I don't believe that any of the scenarios that my friend and his friend are going to come to pass. Unfortunately, I would love to be wrong. If I'm wrong, I would gladly buy each of them a drink, right? I do believe, though, that it could lead to something else, which I just described, which would be the splitting of the Republican Party into a citizen wing and a corporate wing. And that, I believe, would be the true revolution that Donald Trump will have begun as president of the United States. So please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Odyssey, right? You can see Sticks Hexenhammer here on looking like he's about to sneeze. And also, I happen to have been watching his videos this morning on BitChute, right? So you see a great shot of him, I guess, conjuring a spirit or something. That's about it. So subscribe to me on BitChute and Odyssey and Rumble and anywhere else that is in the links. And you can also find my newsletter from MailChimp. I might actually start a Substack. So if you're on the MailChimp one, I will try to find a way to transfer it over to Substack if I decide to do that. I don't know yet, but this video has gone long enough. So like, share, and subscribe. Do all the other subscriptions everywhere else. And have a great Sunday and Happy New Year.